we have, I'm going to try and get this right, Rob Hulme, Head of Business Development Industrial Sales for Bayer Corp. We have Rick Hobby, Senior Vice President Government Affairs for Herbalife. We have Jake Layes, who you met this morning. We have Herry Cho, who Hadit was just referring to from ING. And we have David Clark, the Chief Sustainability Officer at Amcor for Asia Pacific. Excellent. And here's Stefan. Okay, so here we have 6 organizations that are all doing things to scale up. And really what we're going to do is ask each of you 4 minutes, please, to talk about what you're doing and the commitment you're making to support the scale up we're talking about. Is that okay? And the 4 minutes is on the clock. I'll give you a 1 minute warning if that's okay. Where do you want to start? Stefan, are you ready, or shall we go start here somewhere?
I mean, I would like to hear the others first.
You'd like to hear the others first? Okay, we'll let Stefan, as UNDP and our sponsor, go last. Rob, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
That was a great hand pass. You know, Bayer is it's a life science company, a German company with a 150-odd year history. You know, out of all of the SDGs, our core focus is around 2, and I think that's actually one of the key messages I'd like to take to the panel. Is that with Zero Hunger, which focuses on our crop science business, supporting in particular smallholder farmers here in Asia, 450 million smallholders, and addressing fragmentation, whether it's through crop protection products or germplasm, or as we heard about just before the break, about big data. It's important to try and connect smallholders, both in terms of knowledge transfer and innovation. I think addressing hunger is as much about providing volume of food in the right places as it is about providing the right diet, the right mix of diet. So I think that's something that we shouldn't lose focus for. The second SDG we focus on is Healthy Life, which focuses more around our healthcare business. So that's commitments around disease prevention and therapeutics, and innovation in medicine. And that brings to another point, and it's a point that, you know, as a science-based organisation, we face challenges every day, and more it seems in the last perhaps 3 to 4 years about the value of science and innovation. And we're challenged more and more about not only the value that people are willing to pay for, but actually the legitimacy of a science-based organisation, science-based business. I think it's as much about having, of course, it's about responsible business development, having a triple bottom line, and meeting the expectations of our shareholders, but actually having transparent dialogue with our stakeholders. And for that matter, just as much as we have that dialogue with our shareholders, we rely on NGOs, we rely on government organisations to bring those products through to market. And so having that collaboration, you may have seen in the market recently about LEAPS, our program out of Boston, where Boston, of course, is not traditionally renowned as a huge agricultural base, but there's huge amounts of capital flowing into agriculture, and in particular in Asia. And I think Asia, arguably more than any region globally, has the biggest upside in terms of productivity increase. So if it's drone technology in China, if it's robotics that are currently flowing out of Vietnam, if it's focusing in new technologies in seeds or digital decision support for smallholder farmers, rice farmers, I think there are lots and lots of opportunities that we can bring, and in doing so, bring a leadership position as thought leaders in business to support investment, sustainable investments that make a difference for those, in particular, those 2 SDGs.
Perfect, thank you. Is there one particular program or something going on in this region that Bayer's involved in you'd be particularly proud of or you could talk to?
You know, I think we talked about smallholder farmers and the challenges of fragmentation and knowledge transfer for information technology, agronomics, genomics that we would otherwise take for granted in other developed markets around the world. So transferring the digital farming systems that we see in North and South America in particular into smallholder farmers, but using the smartphone as a basis. So we need not only smartphone adoption, but we need connectivity. And we need, of course, the telcos to support making that network more effective.
So you're starting to communicate right down with the smallholder farmer if you could get the connectivity.
Yeah, and I think whereas traditionally we relied on government agencies, more and more it's about using digital technology to connect, share information and best practice, and put smallholder farmers in a position that they can make good decisions and get access to finance and get a good return for cash in their pocket. That gives them decisions to address poverty and put their kids through school and put food on the table. And that
Brilliant.
makes a difference.
Great, thank you. Great to hear what Bayer is doing to try and improve their livelihoods and deal with food at the same time. Rick, Herbalife, what are we doing to scale up?
Thank you. Well, first of all, we regard ourselves rather as a novice here, and we're impressed by everything that we've learned here in the last 2 days. This is our second year of engagement here. What we're really pleased about is that last year we came and we had a certain story, a certain engagement, and this year we were able to come back and say that we'd done better. But there's still a lot more for us to do. Our company has been engaged on a more of a national basis rather than a global basis in sustainability efforts, and we've certainly been engaged in making commitments in the Global Compact since 2010. But really one of the big sustainability issues that brought our whole company to its attention, we are one of the world's largest suppliers in the retail sense of soy protein isolate. And of course, soy protein is vegetable protein, and it has a great story to it. But we found that our customers were demanding a non-GM form of soy. And so we went to Brazil to source that because that was a place where there was a lot of soy grown, and we could guarantee the non-GM version that our customers were seeking. What we then found out when we started to audit that process, though, was that some of the Brazilian farmers were tearing up rainforests in order to make way to plant soy. And that was a shocking revelation to us, and of course something that we had to do something about, and that was one of the key triggers that really brought home to us this whole message of sustainability. We thought we were a good company doing a lot of good around the world, and we still believe we are. But that message was a great trigger for us, and of course we resolved the issue in terms of supply. Then as we got further engaged, we found that SDG 3 was really a home for us where we had a lot of opportunity to have an impact. And this is all about health, and particularly our focus is on non-communicable diseases. And these are significant diseases that are largely led by lifestyle choices. We found that in an exercise in Mexico, we had created nutrition clubs. And these are small, in Mexico, a home-based nutrition club where 10 or 12 people would gather together, and they would share their nutrition stories. They would have a Herbalife shake, a protein shake, an aloe and a tea, and they would socialize together. And we found that these were great opportunities for people to improve their nutrition and goals by supporting each other. But then as time went a little bit further on in discussion with COFEPRIS, the Ministry of Health in Mexico, who were looking for ways in which they could get their messages out of health and nutrition to the large populace. And Mexico is one of the most obese nations in the world. And so we started a partnership with the Mexican Ministry of Health. And we have now 66,000 nutrition clubs in Mexico, and our nutrition clubs are now authorized as representatives of the government in getting these messages out. So then as we looked at scaling this up here in this region, we have more recently established partnerships with the government of India and in Indonesia, and we're having other discussions with other governments to see what kind of a partnership that we can develop here. In addition to that, we've also found that working with other companies, that we can get groups of companies together who would engage in these partnerships with government to help take these messages out, to helping improve the lives of not just the thousands, but the millions.
Okay, thank you. So that's fantastic what you're doing. I'm intrigued that you didn't realize the impact you were having on soy, which sort of goes to the comment that Rod was saying, companies weren't focused on SDG 15, yet actually it was very important to you.
Right.
What was it that made you first go, that's not good? Was it the risk associated with deforestation? Was it reputational? What was the risk that you were dealing with? When
it's really quite simple. We have ethics built into our core values in the company. And when we went through the audit process and realized what was happening here, we just knew this was wrong. And it was just a simple matter of doing the right thing, and so we had to change.
And being an accountant, was there a financial consequence to that the company was willing to bear because of the ethic driver?
Yes, it was more expensive.
It was more expensive.
It cost us a lot more money. About 12% additional was the additional cost we had to bear. But it just came down to our executives, it was the right thing to do.
Okay, and that's a great story. Is it fair to characterize that you talk about thinking up your supply chain into where is our raw material coming from? You're thinking about your customers and nutrition clubs and pushing them out more. Is that a change for the company to be thinking much more across your value chain than in the past?
It is. We certainly began life as a company, as a marketing company, and found good success commercially. But then the larger we became as a company and as we expanded our footprint across the world, then of course these relevances come home that we have to be a global player in every sense. And of course being sustainable is key to that.
And playing up and down the chain. Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, sir. Jake, we heard a bit about what you're up to this morning. How are you supporting the scaling up?
Yes, first of all, I'd like to say I said something this morning that wasn't quite true. I misspoken. I said we need to build 1,000 cities by 2050. Of course, not 1,000 cities, 1,000 buildings a day. So I didn't want to scare you.
1,000 buildings.
I did wanted to scare you because
1,000 cities, 1,000 buildings a day.
Yes, yeah.
It's a lot either way.
Yeah, it's a lot either way. That's right. So I just want to cover this very quickly. So as I said earlier, so Autodesk is a global leader in the design, engineering, and entertainment software, and our customers, millions of users worldwide, they use our tools to solve either business, social, environmental, or also sometimes, and increasingly so, climate challenges. So the opportunities for us are in multiple ways. We also look, first of all, from our internal space where we are. So we have been, since 2008, reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, I think to 33% of 2008. 32% of our offices are LEED certified. We have gone 100% renewable, including our data centers, which is an important task to achieve. We also believe very strongly that technology in the right hands can go a long way, and that also means we want to ensure that entrepreneurs and startups have that opportunity. There is a program as a commercial startup you can apply and receive software free of charge if you are in the areas of social, environmental, and climate change challenges. We have donated to non-profit organizations over $27 million worth of software to organizations in 55 countries. Wow. As I said earlier as well, it's important that we teach sustainable design. We believe that climate change in itself, so that goal is really also a design opportunity. Many of the flaws that we recognize today in buildings and products sort of have been a design flaw, because 20 years ago we didn't quite have that idea of what the right choices are. So we have now 4 million learners that have gone to our website, learn about how do I build an energy high-performing building, how do I do lightweighting when it comes to products and transportation. So we do quite a lot of this. We also, in 2016, pushed very strongly on pro bono activities. 25,000 hours of employees were logged in volunteering. In 2016, we even had people go to Rwanda to help an organization there to build architecture for the locals, with the locals, so knowledge transfer. So this is all what we do on our company side. As I mentioned a little bit earlier today in my presentation, we believe that technology like simulation analysis tools that you can empower through cloud computation, generative design, so machine learning related algorithm-based design, as well as generally the opportunity to be much closer interacting with technology is something that we do. We help large developers, architectural firms, construction firms, as well as transportation design firms and cities as well, to meet their targets. And that could be for a city to become the most sustainable city in an area. It could also mean to move towards net zero in architecture, which is a reality that many are working on.
Fantastic. Some great stories about how you're helping the pro bono work, the philanthropic activity. Can I come to the commercial side for a minute?
Sure.
So you're a design company, and it sounds like you're moving into being a sustainable design company. Is the demand for the sustainable bit increasing?
Yes. So,
and from where? All sectors or different sectors, more or less?
So first of all, it is increasing. So we see in our customers an increased push beyond just lowering their own carbon footprints, but also actually bringing that into their projects. A lot of it is seen in the building industry. Mm-hmm. That's probably also true because we see more and more countries having green building standards, and they're getting updated on many ways. The Architecture 2030 organization that drives the 2030 commitment, so that by 2030 all new buildings and developments as well as major renovations are carbon neutral, also drives that. So the AIA, the American side, AIA 2030 commitment actually allows through the tools that we have in the Insight analysis tool to report back on how well they're doing. And that pushes architectural firms to even deliver high-performing buildings because they can, even when the owner or the project owner did not ask for it. So we can see that specifically in the built environment and now also the cities.
One last question. Actually, I've got two.
Sure.
So that's a commitment in the US by 2030. All buildings will be zero.
No, the Architecture 2030 organization is actually worldwide. So we've done worldwide. Actually, well, it's sort of starting. We've done a workshop and participated in an event there in Shanghai just in September, and we had, I think, 50 firms coming and wanting to know more about this. So it's not just the US. I gave the US example, but it's increasingly here.
It's a worldwide commitment, and the US hasn't withdrawn from it.
No, it's because the businesses sign up for it, and it's not the government.
Excellent. So the businesses are still there. That's
we need more of that, I think.
Excellent. Yes. Good. And sorry, I think you also, just one last question. I think you also talked about social impact as well as environmental. What does it mean for social impact? What does that mean for you in your work?
Well, there's two things. With cities, you can use this technology and, for example, do a triple bottom line analysis. So we really want to ensure that when people look into retrofitting an entire block, that it turns the city into a financially, environmental, but also social, vibrant city. Social impact also means when we support organizations. There's an organization called BioLight. There are 4 million premature deaths every year because of the black carbon. So they do high efficient cook stoves.
Right.
And that's where you have a tremendous opportunity to, through that technology, provide better tools that goes into communities and so on.
Okay, so it's both social products and social outcomes.
Yes.
Thank you. Brilliant. Thank you for your input. Herry, we've just heard from your boss. Now you can tell us the real story. Okay, what's ING up to?
Okay. Well, before going on to ING, just a little couple personal anecdote. So 10 years ago from today, 2007, when I was still even a younger lady, I went to an event that had 12,000 people in it. So the room was about 15 times the size of this room. It was a 3-day event of personal development. So you can imagine the place was buzzing, the atmosphere was fantastic, and everyone was talking about what they were going to do to change. Now, right at the front though, right at the start, one of the guys leading this and who ultimately became a very good mentor of mine said, there's 12,000 of you in the room here, half of you are not going to do anything about what you heard today. And the other half will do something, but then ultimately 1 year later, only 10% of you would have done something. So that was a lesson for me that it is up to the person, it doesn't matter what you hear, that you have to embody the change that needs to happen. And second quick anecdote is something that stuck by me always is you can't do the same thing, and I'm sure you've heard this a lot as well, you can't do the same thing and expect to see a change. So that's the definition of stupidity, right? So if you want new results, then change what you do. So that leads into, to reiterate what you heard Garrett say earlier today. Some of the commitments that ING is making, which is a bit different, is 3 things that I'd like to highlight. Number 1, we'd like to make sure that there is convergence of the megatrends, sustainability and innovation. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Second one, we have a strategy that is called Beyond Banking. I'll also go into what that means. And number 3, part of that means fostering ecosystem. What that means is if there's something that we can't do, then we should still be enablers of that which we couldn't do to still make happen. Examples. Merging innovation and sustainability. Gary's already mentioned of products that we're innovating in the market. So, of course, green bonds everyone's heard of. But what's really interesting about these products, right? And they're still small scale compared to the overall capital markets. It's only 0.2% of the debt capital market. Loans is only beginning. Literally labeled green loans kicked off this year. But the way it has changed the conversation between the different stakeholders is phenomenal. Suddenly, the sustainability story wasn't no longer just operational or sustainability team story. The treasurer was in the room. The CFO is in the room. Everybody's engaged. And suddenly, the conversation that we have as stakeholders in companies becomes a positive spin rather than a negative impact mitigation story of us saying, we lend to you, so you have to change you have to make sure that this gets met. It became a story of, we want to partner with you to make sure that you meet your own hurdles, your own ambitions, and we want you to set your ambitions high. And if you meet those, then we will reward you in terms of discounts, in terms of how we price your loan. So that really has been something amazing to see at our corporate client level. But some of the other innovation we are looking at is those who cannot tap into the capital markets. How do you make the funding flow there? So even within the space of green loans or green capital markets instruments, as Gary alluded to, we're constantly looking at new structures, innovative structures, whether it be some kind of a wrap in order to make those happen. And finally, I see I have 7 seconds left. In terms of Beyond Banking, we decided to create a 300 million euro venture fund. And what that means is it's not only going to be investing in fintechs, it's going to be investing in spin-off projects from within the company, and we'll make sure that well, I will make sure from this region at least that sustainability gets embedded into those. So some of the projects that's coming out fully considers the sustainability aspects as a megatrend too. And SFC Asia is an example of that too. That is slowly fitting into that program, into the innovation work stream. And this morning we had a really great small scale, I'm sorry, it was a bit of a closed-door discussion, but a discussion on SFC Asia. I mean, the discussion was amazing about how platforms are going to become hyper platforms as platforms get connected to each other, and how you look at the financing fund, the stream all the way down the value chain, from the grants to capacity building to equity debt, etc. Thank you.
So, just on that last bit about the hyper connections. We've heard a lot about collaboration and uncommon collaborations. Would you collaborate with your competitor banks in this financing platforms?
Yeah, absolutely. So the funding panel members who started off 1 year ago consisted of 2 commercial banks, so ourselves, commercial stroke investment banks, ourselves and Credit Suisse. And then it also included a Dutch development bank called FMO and UNDP, UN Social Impact Fund, who are co-organizers here today. You know, but it was beautiful because, and I say beautiful because we hold these bi-weekly calls, and yes, the process needs to be improved. How we collaborate together is something we're fine-tuning, but it really became an open space where everyone was talking about their ideas around the investment and how we can combine the capitals together. So yes, it is possible.
So it is absolutely real that we can work with our competitors in a positive way.
I think ethos and the principles of how that gets done and governance has to be very clear and very well thought out, but it is possible.
Okay, and one last question, if I may. You talked about this sort of banking where you're offering loans and encouraging your customers, offering them, if you like, to do better things as a result of lending the money. What if they're not interested? Here in the room, we've got a sort of a coalition of the willing, companies who are here to learn and want to try and do better. I can't believe your entire customer portfolio is customers like that. What if your customer isn't interested in wanting to do better?
Hey, I mean, great question. I mean, so firstly, we have started off with the leaders, or at least not only the leaders, right? Because that's a subset, but those who are at least willing to make a transition. So those who were willing to say, I want to put sustainability practices into place, we want to put teams into place, and we want to look at how we can combine that with financing thoughts. So that's where we're at. But of course, we do have companies that couldn't care less. And a lot of them, unfortunately, are still in this region, but that is changing. I mean, you're alluding to the Task Force for Climate Financial Disclosure, Climate-Related Disclosure, TCFD, but not only that, but in Europe, where there's leading discussions around this, the high-level expert group, for example, commissioned by the European Commission, one of the key material things that's coming out of that, which is currently voluntary recommendation, but who knows, it might get actually adapted as a regulation, is that all of the sustainability reporting should sit under the CFO.
Yep, correct. That's a good place to stop here. All the sustainability reporting should sit under the CFO. And whilst I remember the thing you said at the beginning, that all the people in the room, 50% said they'd do something and only 10% would do it. Hands up in the room who's going to do something having left this conference. Come on. That's about 50%. No, probably 60%, I think. Good. So what we want is all 60% of you to actually do something, okay? And not drop it down to 10. Right, David, what are we getting up to at Amcor?
Yep. Hi, everyone. For those of you who aren't familiar with Amcor, we're a manufacturer of packaging for major consumer brands. So that's packaging for food, beverages, medicine, home and personal care products. A large majority of our products today are single-use plastic packages. And the fact is not lost on me that those packages are essentially excluded from this forum, which is a really strong message. So when we were sitting in the session on plastic waste and SDG 14, we talked about what would happen if there were no plastic packaging, because the same thing that makes plastic such a problem in the environment, it's lightweight, it's impermeable, it's strong, it's resilient, make it the best material today for moving food and other things through complex supply chains, making sure that people receive safe and healthy food, contributing to health, well-being, reducing impacts on land use and water. And when you start looking at how do we come up with a solution that benefits all of those, like many things that we've talked about here, the breakthroughs come through collaboration. And that's why Amcor is a core partner in the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's New Plastics Economy project, which is looking at how do we move from the linear economy today, where we make products, use them, and dispose of them, to a circular economy where at the end of life, packaging materials and other materials become raw materials that are used for either new packaging or for other products, eliminating the concept of waste basically, and creating a perpetual cycle of use. So last month at the Our Oceans conference in Malta, several of Amcor's customers, who are also partners in the New Plastics Economy project, made commitments that by 2025, 100% of their plastic packaging would either be recyclable, reusable, or compostable. And several of them made commitments that their packaging would include recycled content. So that's a game changer for a company like Amcor, who supplies the packaging to these companies. And it's something that we're taking very seriously. Of course, that only works if the infrastructure exists to actually collect the packaging and bring it back. So bringing things down to earth here in Asia, one of the things that Amcor is looking at is what can we do here to assure that that infrastructure gets created so that when we create the recyclable packaging, it can come back. And we've partnered with a local consultancy here in Singapore called Gone Adventuring, and they've produced a report for us looking at initiatives today in India, Indonesia, and Philippines that are looking at how do we recover flexible plastic packaging, which is probably the most difficult packaging to collect, what's working, what isn't working, and what should companies like Amcor and others be focused on to help bring that infrastructure into existence. So all of that's coming together. We've talked a lot about partnerships and collaboration, which are very important in these types of situations. But I think I'd go beyond that, because without real understanding and without real listening to understand what's our role and what's everyone's role in creating these types of systems, they're not going to come about. Albert Einstein said, if you give me an hour to solve a problem, I'll spend 55 minutes understanding the problem and 5 minutes working on the solution. And when we're dealing with these types of complexities, that's really what it takes. It takes a lot of work, not just collaborating and partnering, but really deeply understanding what's needed in terms of government policy, recycling systems, regulation around what can and can't be used in packaging to make these types of commitments come to life.
Brilliant, thank you. So I've got two questions for you. One very similar to the question I had for Rick. Does that mean for you that you're now reaching further out into your value chain to think about what it means for you as an organization yourself?
Yes, that's exactly right. I mean, traditionally we've talked to our suppliers and we've talked to our customers on either side of the value chain. Now we have to think beyond that to, the end of life of the consumer. When they put something in a recycle bin, what do the recyclers need? What do they consider as recyclable or not recyclable? And what happens on the other end in terms of converting these back into materials that we can
So you used to think about your customer, and now thinking about your customer's customer and your customer's customer's customer.
Exactly, it's systems thinking. Yeah.
So you're having to do systems thinking where you didn't before.
Right.
And have you got people with the skills to do that in the organization?
We have some, and we're still learning what skills we need in some cases.
Okay, brilliant. And the second question, you started and reminded everybody that whilst packaging everybody thinks was a bad thing, it's a good thing, right? Because it does exactly what you say. It's lightweight. It has an efficacy to it. Your customers are demanding that you make packaging which is recyclable, reusable, whatever. But it mustn't lose the efficacy. It must still do what it was meant to do, keep the food good.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Does the technology exist to be as efficient as it is today, but also be recyclable, or have you got to find new technologies to meet your customers' demands?
We'll need to find new technologies. One of the findings that the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's New Plastics Economy project has released in their reports is today about 50% of plastic packaging is recyclable in its current form. And typically there the issue is recycling infrastructure.
Right.
About 30% of packaging today is not recyclable and needs to be redesigned in some way. In many cases, the technologies don't exist that give you the barrier properties that you need, the strength that you need to achieve the goals of what we have today. And about 20% of packaging could actually be replaced by something that is reusable in the right situations. So, there's a lot to be done in the next 7 years.
So your challenge is to avoid the law of unintended consequences, which is to make the packaging recyclable, and suddenly we have a food waste problem because it doesn't keep it for as long, for example.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Stefan, you can hide no longer. So, last but not least, from your perspective, what's UNDP thinking about in terms of scaling?
Thank you, Malcolm. First of all, really impressive what you're all doing. This is from the United Nations side, of course. It's exactly those partners that we look at, because the dilemma is that in contrast to you, our whole raison d'etre as the United Nations system is to deliver on the SDGs and on the Agenda 2030, with having only a minute portion, obviously, of the resources available. So the catalyzing role of the United Nations is absolutely key. The whole reform agenda of the United Nations, which is at the moment going on under the leadership of the Secretary General, is to make the UN system fit for purpose to deliver on the SDGs. And UNDP has a very important part of that. Some people have asked me, so what are you actually doing? And I think, the UN, you can compare it a little bit to a national government with different line ministries, in our case line agencies. And I would describe UNDP as the planning ministry, the Ministry of Economy, and the Ministry of Justice of the UN system. So that also defines our work on SDGs. Usually we work with governments, and we are working with them to align national planning with SDG planning at national level, as local level, and so on. Because of that close engagement, we usually know where the shortcomings are in terms of the SDG framework. So when we detect shortcomings, we partner with other partners to address some of these shortcomings. And then we are supporting the governments to also use this sophisticated SDG indicator framework for progress monitoring, which is absolutely key. Because of course everybody can say that they are contributing to SDGs, but I think where really the rubber will hit the road is once you have a sophisticated measurement system that slots everybody in and also gives credit to those that are really kind of making a big effort in terms of achievement of SDGs. So government, we are very, very long partners, and that's an easy type of partnership. But it is more difficult, and I'm already out of time, and I'm only coming now to private sector.
You've got a couple of minutes. It didn't reset.
Oh, it didn't. Thank you for not resetting. Excellent.
Doesn't mean you've got forever.
In terms of the private sector, we see our engagement in 3 categories. First of all, to be kind of a convener, like here in the Responsible Business Forum, together with global initiatives. We think that these dialogues are incredibly important to kind of help create a critical mass of commitment. And most of it, of course, comes from private sector to private sector. And we are doing the same at national level. For example, in Malaysia, we did one in India, in other countries, Bangladesh earlier this month. The second category I would call creating an enabling environment to contribute for the private sector to SDGs. So what we are doing is we are working with the government to provide incentive systems and regulatory systems to align with SDGs. One example would be in my last duty station. I was posted in Uzbekistan until about May this year. We worked with the banking system to create a loan product that would incentivize the buying of greenhouses, of green rural housing. So we basically provided subsidized loans, and of course the clientele of housing flocked towards the purchase of green housing. I think it came very clearly out that innovation is very important for us. So this is another area, another hook, I think, of cooperation with UNDP to work on tuning technological advancement and solutions towards the achievement of SDGs. So you saw Sophia, of course, and we presented today how we want to also create an enabling environment for youth to be innovative through Unleash and other activities, our collab, for example, that we have presented during lunch. And thirdly, we are more in the beginning of also providing facilities to channel private capital into SDGs through the establishment of, for example, the UNCIF, the United Nations SDG impact funding, and also through looking into Islamic financing, where there's, of course, enormous scope to finance SDGs. So I would basically say the role is convening, it's creating an enabling environment and have specific projects to address SDG issues, and thirdly, to have bigger financing solutions for SDGs. So for us, the co-organizership of this conference is absolutely key. It's really our expression that we are keen to partner with the private sector, because otherwise we can't achieve it. And we look forward to your positive response. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. And I've got two questions, one on that and one before. You mentioned your core, if you like, where the UN comes from is working with government and measurement. We've got the 232 indicators and governments are measuring against how they're doing. And you briefly mentioned, said there should be credit for countries that were doing well. What does that actually mean? What does it mean for a country who's doing well on achieving an SDG, moves the dial? What does credit mean in the UN system?
What that means is that today, goodwill is not only associated basically to companies if they are doing good, but it's obviously also very important for countries to be in line with the international framework. And the SDGs are at the moment the universally agreed international framework. So there is a system of reporting in place. There is, at this point in time, is a yearly report of the Secretary General, which measures the performance of countries against all of the 16 goals. It's not yet perfect because the data sets for these goals and for the 244 indicators are partly very complex. I mean, even countries like Germany are still kind of finding new ways of getting the data sets together. But in a few years, we will have, I think, a fairly strong macro reporting on all of the countries or most of the countries towards the SDGs, and then you can really kind of identify who are those that support a sustainable, future for the planet, for the people, and for prosperity, and who are the less strongly performing countries.
Yeah, and on that basis, the UK Office of National Statistics, they've just issued their report. They're currently reporting on 96 of the 232. But back to my question is, if you're the Prime Minister of or the President of a country and you are pushing very hard to get up the rankings, do you get more than a pat on the back? Do you get access to cheaper loan finance if you're in the developing country, for example? What does it mean to be better up the rankings, apart from your country looks good in the eyes of the UN?
There is no direct relationship to basically, loan performance. I mean, or kind of provision of loans at this point in time. But again, it's the same with the human rights system. If you adhere to the human rights system, you are, for example, creating a better environment for investment. There will be, it's more and more kind of, I think, an agreed upon principle that countries need to adhere to international principles to be, in a sense, attractive for investors. And that's much stronger than, I think, a subsidized loan. This is much bigger financial flows.
So you create an environment where you're a more investable country and therefore a better economy.
Absolutely.
Perfect. And then my last question for you, you talked about the fact that engaging with the private sector is slightly newer territory for the UN. You've had 2 days with the private sector here. You're encouraging everyone to participate in that collaboration. What do you see as one of the bigger barriers or one of the bigger challenges for you in engaging? Because I don't think there's any lack of willingness to make it happen. What sort of challenges would you like to see being overcome?
I think there's a bit of a language challenge, but I think we are coming very closely together. It's a learning process, I think, from both sides. And then we have different products than the private sector, and I think that is the incredible potential of collaboration. We have traditionally, grant products. You have basically products where you definitely want to have value for money and return for investment. And we know that we cannot achieve the SDGs with grant products. It's only a very tiny layer of, where we can kind of add to the private sector for areas that will not be financed by the private sector. But I would say there are certain barriers, but they can all be overcome. I would be very interested to set up, for example, a kind of an advisory council of businesses so that we can align our thinking and that we can create joint products that we do in line with what you said, that you do first 95% research and then you have the solution is only 5%. First we need to understand each other's constraints, each other's potential, and when we do that, I think then we can perfectly align the way forward as partners.
Fantastic, thanks. You heard it here, a council, advisory council between the UN and the private sector. Right, since we set this sector up, a couple of other organisations have jumped forward saying we'd like to say something as well about our commitment. So hopefully somewhere in the room, I've got Karen Du from Mary Kay. Is Karen around? There we go. Has Karen got a microphone, or can we get a microphone to Karen? There we go, just stay there, Karen, that's fine. So Karen is the Corporate Responsibility Manager for Mary Kay.
Hello everyone, I'm Karen from Mary Kay China. Mary Kay China is a direct seller of skincare, color cosmetics, and nutrition through its 1 million female independent beauty consultants. Mary Kay China recognized the value of SDG for human social responsibility. Meanwhile, we believe that Mary Kay first need to focus on the SDG most compatible with our mission, business model, professional competency and influence, so as to achieve the best resources and investment allocation, and more efficiently implement the 2030 agenda. So as a company with the mission of enriching women's life, Mary Kay China is committed to integrate our business development into the framework of SDG and make full use of our advantages of business model in promoting gender equality. And I think private sectors could help women achieve economic independence by providing them with employment opportunities. So Mary Kay China will empower millions of women in China through flexible working hours, clear business opportunities, and a comprehensive training system, support and service, so as to help them to improve their capability. And meanwhile, I think private sector could also create a fair environment for women with gender awareness at workplace, and thus meeting women's demands for development. So Mary Kay China will also support UNDP's Gender Equality Seal program in China to empower its thousands of female employees at workplace, and influencing and promoting gender equality. And we believe more and more women are to be stimulated to review more potential. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So Mary Kay, building SDGs into policy, particularly with a focus on achievement of SDG 5. Thank you very much indeed. And then I've got, hopefully, Erwin Chang from Raise. Erwin, and I think we're going to get a microphone to you. Erwin is a manager for capacity building at Raise, which is small r, small a, capital I-S-E, I think.
Yep, that's right. So we're the Singapore Centre for Social Enterprise, or known as RAISE, and we were set up in 2015 to help develop the social enterprise sector in Singapore. And as a social enterprise sector developer, we have qualified over 400 social enterprises in Singapore, and we bring together aspiring social entrepreneurs, supportive organizations, and individuals through our individual various programs, initiatives, and events to help build a vibrant social enterprise ecosystem. So today, we'd like to take this opportunity to announce our collaboration with City Development Limited, CDL, on a partnership to provide an incubation space for social enterprises named SE Incubator for Good. And this will be at the Republic Plaza, which is a prime location within the Central Business District of Singapore. This incubator space will aim to help selected social enterprise startups to build a strong foundation for their growth through providing critical support for them in the startup phase. And in line with CDL's long-standing commitment towards sustainability, CDL aims to support startups whose products or services will contribute towards the UN SDGs and create shared economic, environmental, and social value through this incubator space. So apart from the incubator space, CDL will be offering mentorship in business or management expertise and to advice to relevant enterprises. The Singapore Sustainability Academy, created by CDL, will also be used as a venue for joint events and activities that complement the Zero Energy Academy's mission of creating a cleaner, greener, and more sustainable future. And RAISE will be administering and facilitating the use of this incubator space, the services with the selected startups. RAISE will also assess these Singapore-based startups developed through the program for eligibility and at the incubation space. So qualified social enterprises will also be able to access various benefits and possible avenues of funding provided by RAISE. And through this program, and with the help of the UNDP Youth Collab, which we heard they're sharing at lunch, it is a movement that's going to be empowering young people in Asia and Asia Pacific. And they will accelerate the implementation of SDGs through leadership, social innovation, and entrepreneurship. So we hope that in the next few years, we will see more sustainable social enterprises created and creating economic value and meeting the social needs here in Singapore. Thank you.
Thank you. So through the collaboration, we're creating the physical environment of the space, the learning environment with the mentorship, and with the collab, the acceleration of more social entrepreneurs. Fantastic. That's the end of this session. Thank you very much for all your commitments. We hope that we're not going to be the 10% who do something, we're going to be the 100% who do something, and next year we'll hear from all these organizations about what they've achieved in their scale up. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.